Well, hope that everybody's having a good first weekend in a long time without 49ers football. And hey, the good news is, even if the 49ers would have beaten the Rams, you would have had to deal without a game this weekend because we have that gap in between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl. But the 49ers are already in off-season mode, and they've hired this guy, former Chargers head coach Anthony Lynn, to be an assistant head coach, and his role is still being carved out, but I have a good idea of why the 49ers brought him aboard. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Let's talk Anthony Lynn, who has some 49ers roots. He was a running back for them in 1995 and 1996 under George Seifert, who was the coach at the time. Steve Young was obviously the quarterback at the time. Those were the first 2 years of losses to Green Bay in the playoffs. But there obviously is a connection. And this was after Mike Shanahan left the 49ers, but then Lynn ended his career as a running back, playing under Shanahan and Bobby Turner for the Broncos. Under Mike Shanahan and Bobby Turner for the Broncos in the late 1990s. And then he coached as a special teams coach under Mike Shanahan and with Bobby Turner to begin his coaching career with Denver right after that in the early 2000s. So Anthony Lynn is familiar with both the 49ers way and with the Shanahans, having played for and having coached under Mike Shanahan. And, you know, it's interesting enough, Steve Young, this was a couple of years ago. This is way before the 49ers hired Anthony Lynn. This is still when he was with the Chargers. Steve Young has said that Anthony Lynn is an honorary member of the Bill Walsh coaching tree. And by that, I mean that he's related to Kyle Shanahan as far as coaching goes and as far as lineage and philosophy goes. Bill Walsh was very particular with how he did things and how he created his spirit of abundance. We've talked about this on other videos that I can link to a little bit later. But his organizational philosophy was passed down through the ages, through the generations, right, to where we are now in the NFL. And Kyle Shanahan's an honorary member of the Bill Walsh tree because his dad coached for the 49ers from 1992 to 1994. Now, Walsh was no longer with the organization then, but when Walsh left following that 1988 season, he made his defensive coordinator, George Seifert, take everything that he knew and carry forward the same organizational practices that the 49ers had rode to great success in the 80s. So when you talk to former players, when you talk to coaches, you talk about the 1990s under Seifert, well, the 49ers still tried to embrace a lot of the same values that Bill Walsh had embedded within the organization in the 80s. So anybody who played for the 49ers in the 1990s, and Anthony Lynn obviously counted as that, playing for them in 1995 and 1996, was able to take the blueprint of the dynastic 49ers and apply it forward later in his career. So that's why Steve Young said that Anthony Lynn is an honorary member of the Bill Walsh coaching tree. By extension, Kyle Shanahan also is as well, right? Shanahan is Mike's son. Mike was the offensive coordinator from 92 to 94. Kyle was obviously the ball boy during those years, especially during that Super Bowl year in 1994. And it all comes full circle now with Shanahan hiring Lynn to be on the 49ers staff. Now, Anthony Lynn was the Chargers head coach for a few seasons. Then he was Detroit's offensive coordinator last year. His specialty is a diversified run game. He was obviously running back in the day. He's obviously worked with Bobby Turner, both as a player and then as a coach with the Denver Broncos. And we know that the 49ers have a diversified run game. When Anthony Lynn was with the Buffalo Bills in 2016, this was before he took the Chargers head coaching job. He was the offensive coordinator that succeeded Greg Roman in Buffalo. And the Bills actually put together one of the league's best rushing attacks, despite not having the most talented offensive line. And they did so with a nice mix of zone read, with a nice mix of power running, some gap scheme stuff. I mean, it was truly a rushing attack that you couldn't really put your finger on. You couldn't pigeonhole it into one type of attack. And this is extremely important for the 49ers at this juncture, because it really does appear that the beginning of the Trey Lance era is going to be in 2022. And a diversified run game can help Trey Lance, especially this early in his career. We saw where Trey was in his two starts with the 49ers for 2021. It was against Arizona in week 5, and then he made some progress since then. in week 17 when he took the reins for the game against the Houston Texans. But especially early on in that Texans game, and then especially throughout all 4 quarters of the game against Arizona, the 49ers were really run heavy, to the point where I thought they ran Trey Lance a little too much for his own good. 16 times in that game, including 10 or 11 designed runs. For a 21-year-old in the NFL against what was at the time one of its best defenses of the season, early on when the Cardinals still had J.J. Watt and all those guys, I think that was pushing it a little with Trey Lance, because he doesn't have a Josh Allen-like body yet. Still about 20 or 30 pounds short of that. He's going to be in an NFL weight room this offseason. But I understood the strategy, even though I criticized it, because the 49ers weren't yet confident, and Trey Lance probably wasn't fully confident in his passing abilities back in week 5. He was still acclimating to the NFL level. So the 49ers installed a ton of run stuff. And then obviously in week 17, we saw a lot of run stuff early. We saw an erratic passing game, but then Trey found his stride in the second half. Well, the 49ers hope that development trajectory continues going upward. But what's going to happen with this football team with Trey under center is that you're going to have different box counts. You're going to have defenses have to account for the quarterback running. So, instead of playing 11 on 11 football, in a way, you could be playing 11 on 10 in the pass game, because there's going to be one guy coming into that box, making sure that the quarterback isn't taking off and running with the football. That means that a diversified run game, if that is indeed the basis of your offense, if the 49ers get even more run heavy with Trey Lance than they were with Jimmy Garoppolo, if this is going to be pushed fully into that direction, diversifying the run game is going to be more important than ever. We don't sugarcoat things here, and it's important to note that the 49ers were dominated up front by the Los Angeles Rams in the NFC Championship game. Now, there might have been extenuating circumstances there, right? There might have been the injuries along the offensive line. Trent Williams was playing with a high ankle sprain. I think that hurt a lot of what the 49ers were doing. The Rams also obviously very familiar with the 49ers scheme, but on the game's biggest play, on 2nd and 1, they brought Eric Weddle into the box, and the 49ers couldn't run for a yard. Sunk Elijah Mitchell for that 1-yard loss. It became 3rd and 2. Then the 49ers couldn't, make it work with Trent Williams coming in motion, and the rest was history. They punted. Jaquiski Tartt dropped the interception, and that was emblematic of a larger game-long trend of the 49ers not being able to run it. And moving forward, they're going to have to be able to run it even when other teams know what's coming. So I really think that Anthony Lynn, with his background as a run game specialist, somebody who was able to deliver creative results in Buffalo back in 2016 with the Chargers as their head coach over the next few seasons. And then even last year, if you watch some Detroit Lions tape, there was some creativity to the run game. I think the Lions were depleted talent-wise. They had Goff at quarterback. Obviously, that offensive line was a big work in progress. I don't think anybody was really ready to succeed in Detroit this past year, but the 49ers aren't asking Anthony Lynn to be a head coach. They're asking him to bring that versatile knowledge as far as implementing the run game goes to the 49ers so that they can advance into the Trey Lance era. And whatever the 49ers do to make the run game better, to take some pressure off Kyle Shanahan in that regard, maybe to give Anthony Lynn some of those organizational duties so that Kyle Shanahan can fully focus on crafting a very good run game, all of that can help Trey Lance moving forward. And a side note here is that the John Embry situation now makes a whole lot more sense. That John Embry was the former 49ers tight ends coach, and a report came out a couple days ago before this Lynn news that Embry was essentially being forced out of the 49ers organization because they offered him a 60% pay cut, and obviously he didn't want to take it. Well, long story short here, Embry was an assistant head coach. The 49ers didn't want to pay for multiple assistant head coaches, and it's now clear in retrospect that they wanted to bring Anthony Lynn in. And since Lynn was a former NFL head coach, a title that Embry didn't have, Embry was a former college head coach. But since Lynn was a former NFL head coach, he would get that assistant head coach role. And to keep Embry around, the 49ers said, well, you're going to have to take a little bit less and maybe not have that assistant head coach title. I don't know the exact details of the machinations, but now that we know the big picture, we see that they've hired Lynn. We see that Embry obviously didn't agree to stay aboard. That shuffle makes sense. Is there a reason to be concerned about the tight ends coach position? Well, I think we should give John Embry a lot of credit for developing George Kittle. I told this story on Twitter the other day, but back as a rookie, George Kittle, every single time that he ran out of bounds, John Embry fined him $10. a yak monster was born through the forcing of habit, right? Do not run out of bounds, stay in bounds, run people over. I think you have to give John Embry a lot of credit for that. I think the 49ers wanted to probably keep him, but obviously every organization has a budget, and maybe at the coaching ranks, the 49ers and Jed York or, whoever from up above said, well, if you're going to have an assistant head coach, you're going to pay all this money, well, pick one. And Anthony Lynn, it appears, is going to slot into that role. But the specialty for him has been, over his prior coaching stops, those diversified run games. And he's going to try to help Kyle Shanahan bring that in with the 49ers after having worked under Mike Shanahan in the past, and after having worked with 49ers running backs coach Bobby Turner in the past. And this, just a cool nugget that 49ers fans should be excited about. Steve Young has said that Anthony Lynn is an honorary member of the Bill Walsh coaching tree, thanks to his 49ers roots. So I'm going to take a few questions. Then I may record one more video, but I may have to go too. So subscribe to the channel. Let's see what you guys have to say. Yes, Lynn did play for Mike Shanahan in the late 1990s with the Denver Broncos, and he coached under Mike Shanahan as well. Anthony Lynn was, in fact, coached by Bobby Turner. Let's see. Where else are you guys? Any more questions? Straight run game, different types of new coaches, new guard, new QB, new running back, new scheme. I don't know if it's going to be a whole new scheme for the 49ers. I think that they're constantly evolving with what they try to do, because the league has tried to counter what the 49ers have done. Remember all the success they saw in 2019 running the game, running the ball? Well, I think the 49ers took a lot of what was, happening around the NFL by storm, right, in that season. They were ahead of what the status quo in the NFL was in 2019. And then the league is going to counter adjust. And then you have to adjust back. And it's this constant chess match. Well, you bring in innovative minds. And Anthony Lynn, you can say what you want about his tenure coaching the Los Angeles Chargers. And I believe they were in San Diego when he first took over. But say what you want about all of that. He knows the run game, and his experience is in the run game. So if you bring him in as an assistant head coach and he's able to focus on that and maybe take a little bit off of Kyle Shanahan's plate, then the signing here makes a whole lot of sense, because I really do think that a diversified run game can help Trey Lance, especially early in his career. All right. Well, this is a good question. What does this mean for Mike McDaniel? Well, we'll see what ends up happening with Mike McDaniel. If he gets a job somewhere else, then obviously this will help take some pressure off of Kyle Shanahan, because now you have another run game specialist in. This is a great question, because Mike McDaniel for a long time has been the architect of a lot of what the 49ers run game has done. But I think that this doesn't necessarily mean anything for Mike McDaniel. I think he could still stay, and the 49ers would still be happy to have Anthony Lynn. I think the fact that his role is still being ironed out means that the 49ers are still patiently waiting to see if Mike McDaniel gets the Miami job or something else, right? And that way you can then slot and structure your staff in a way that makes sense with or without Mike McDaniel on it. Again, it's never a bad thing to have too many good coaches, too many smart minds. And I think that's something that Kyle Shanahan has done a good job of since 2017. I think he's done a good job of bringing in good minds and fostering an environment in which coaches can develop and move on to other places. Robert Saleh, obviously, being example A for the 49ers in 2017, but you have LaFleur on the staff, right? Mike LaFleur, not Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur, that was from another stop. But you had Mike LaFleur on the staff for the 49ers. You had Robert Saleh on the staff for the 49ers. John Embry, the tight ends coach who they had here for the first 5 seasons, he was a guy who was a former college head coach who had extensive coaching experience. So with Mike McDaniel, he's a coach that you ultimately hope makes that next step, because that means he's doing a good job for you. But in the short term, you're going to be more selfish as the 49ers. You're going to have to hope that he stays. And if he does, then you have McDaniel. Then you have Anthony Lynn. Then, of course, you have Kyle Shanahan. And that means you have a strong brain trust at the top of the offense. All right, guys. Sounds good. Everything has been fun today. Why don't you guys subscribe to the channel? Thanks for the good questions. 49ers hire Anthony Lynn, and the Trey Lance film breakdown, as well as the Jimmy Garoppolo potential trade price breakdown, is going to be coming soon. Everybody take care.